Two more Starbucks cafes unionized on Wednesday. Workers won elections in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania and Eugene, Oregon, both firsts in their respective states. That's now over 20 cafes unionized, still only one loss. In both elections, it was a unanimous vote that makes four straight cafes that have won union elections without a single worker voting against it. They're almost making it look easy. Of course, it's not easy. Wins by Starbucks and Amazon workers aside, it is still very difficult to form a union in the United States, especially against major corporate employers with sophisticated union busting operations. And it's only gotten harder over time as labor protections in federal law have been chipped away, resulting in historically low unionization rates today. But recent moves being made within the NLRB could be game-changing. Last week, we discussed Board General Counsel Jennifer Abruzzo's efforts to stop bosses from forcing workers to listen to union-busting propaganda, so-called captive audience meetings. In a memo to regional directors, she said such practices should be considered a violation of labor law. This week, Abruzzo is brandishing an even bigger weapon on behalf of workers, the Joy Silk Doctrine. On Monday, Abruzzo filed a briefing in a case urging the agency to restore the doctrine. The board relied on the legal theory for decades to force bosses that committed unfair labor practices during union drives to recognize the union and bargain with it no matter how the election turned out. Basically, the way it used to work is the NLRB can just order a company to start negotiating with a union as soon as workers have shown a majority of support for it. Employers are allowed to make a good faith effort to verify that a majority of workers do indeed support the union. But anything beyond that, any sort of delay or coercion by the boss, could be grounds for the NLRB simply to force the employer to begin bargaining without conducting a secret ballot election. It's during those elections that companies really deploy their union-busting tactics. So by eliminating them and allowing workers to unionize via other means like card check, where a union is formed once a majority of workers sign cards showing intent to join, the labor movement could see a huge boost around the country. The board abandoned Joy Silk about 50 years ago. Since then, Abruzzo noted, the law has failed to deter employers from interfering with the board's election process. And the data backs up Abruzzo's claims. Employers are charged with violating federal law in more than 41% of all union election campaigns, according to a study in 2019 by the Economic Policy Institute. Abruzzo first said she would work to revive Joy Silk last August. The case in which Abruzzo made this filing concerned a cement company with operations in Nevada and California that has for years been disrupting a union campaign by the Teamsters. The NLRB found that Cemex Construction Materials violated labor law at least 25 times between August 2018 and March 2019 as the company worked to narrowly defeat a union election. The brief notes that the organizing campaign ultimately secured overwhelming majority support among respondents' employees. That support, however, was methodically eroded by respondents' coercive and unlawful anti-union campaign leading up to the union election. It goes on to summarize some of the company's tactics, including threats of plant closure, discipline, discharge, reduced hours, and frozen wages, directing employees to remove union stickers and not speaking with the union, interrogation, surveillance, and promises of benefits, and assigning security guards to patrol all plants 2 weeks prior to the election. So on the question of what is to be done now, Abruzzo recommends invoking the Joy Silk Doctrine and forcing the company to begin bargaining. Quote, the board should reinstate the doctrine under Joy Silk Mills, prospectively, because the board's current remedial scheme has failed to deter unfair labor practices during union organizing drives and provide for free and fair elections. Abruzzo further argues that Joy Silk is logically superior to current board law's ability to deter election interference. It directly disincentivizes an employer from engaging in unfair labor practices during organizing campaigns to avoid a bargaining obligation, as doing so will typically result in the imposition of a bargaining order. Now, this is just the beginning of a process. Abruzzo's filing is a recommendation to the board, which may or may not take up reinstating Joy Silk. If it does, there will likely be legal challenges, and the doctrine would have to survive review by reactionary judges. And even if it beats all of those tests, an NLRB with different political appointees in the future could simply reverse all that. Still, capital is melting down over these developments. Notorious union-busting firm Littler Medelson published a statement in response to it all. The firm says about Abruzzo, quote, "As the last several weeks have shown, she is making good on her pledge to tip the scale of labor relations law heavily in favor of employees to the detriment of employers." Yeah, I see no problem with that. Hey, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our new videos. Also, if you want to see Means Morning News in its complete form, not just the clips we post here, head on over to Means TV and get access to all our new episodes and our entire backlog, plus tons of other great movies and original TV shows.